Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Comedy and Magic Podcast. I'm your host, John Marshall.
Yes.
If you're new to the channel, please remember to like and subscribe. Go ahead and smack that bell to be notified of future upcoming episodes. Before I introduce my magical guest this morning, I would like to share with you a very special sneak peek from Craig's Magic Act. Here we go. Joining me today in the virtual studio from the lovely state of Florida is a magician that needs no introduction, but I promised him I would. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podcast the one and only Craig Diamond. Craig, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, John, or good afternoon. What time do you broadcast? Are we broadcasting live now, or does this go out another time?
No, it's going to be edited and
All right, so then I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and it's great to be with you.
Indeed.
Did I cover everything?
You did. And look at that beautiful tan.
Thank you. Well, I just came off a ship, John, and I live in Florida, and I have a convertible, and the top hasn't gone up for years.
Oh my goodness gracious. So, Craig, tell us a little how you got into magic.
Well, I'm an anomaly in a sense because no showbiz in my background, the family, no background at all. I came from a very rural farming community in central Pennsylvania. My dad was in local politics, so that was kind of the only association to showbiz that was going on. But I come from that age. I'm of that age group that the movie Houdini with Tony Curtis,
Yeah.
and Janet Leigh. I saw that when I was about 6 or something. It's about 6, and that was like that did it for me.
Yeah.
Magic Kit followed at Christmas, and then I took to that like I just went crazy with the Magic Kit. Of course, the ball and vase comes with the Magic Kit. Well, not only did that fascinate me, I had to take that to the nth degree for some reason. That's how my mind worked, even at that point. And then fate kind of stepped in. The family had a large poultry business, not acres, but square miles. So we were a huge. Each chicken house was longer than football fields, 50 to 100,000 chickens per, a big operation. And we also had peach and cherry orchards. I was allergic to chicken feathers. That kept me out of the chicken house. Thank God. So, so we had also a peach stand along the highway, and I would sell peaches, which developed a verbal skill for me and a little bit of so at a very young age, I already had that, had my magic kit, do a couple tricks while I was, engaging the customers. Then the summer that I was 7, there was a parcel of land that joined our property that went down on the Susquehanna River in Pennsylvania. And it was a small campground, picnic area, and National Historic Site had a ferry boat that ran across the river there, about 50 campsites. So when the family added that to the thing, that summer that I was 7, I'd go campsite to campsite doing my little tricks from my Sneaky Pete magic kit. And one day I'm at the concession stand sitting there, and a gentleman came up and says, "I understand you like magic." He reached over, took a ketchup bottle off, took the top of the ketchup bottle off, and did a boom, one of those, a nice, beautiful French drop which I had no idea what that was, a beautiful sleight, and the top of the ketchup bottle was gone. And I'd never seen sleight of hand magic. Like, that looked like real magic to me, and my eyeballs fell out of my head. And the best thing was, he and his wife were permanent campers, which meant they were there for the entire summer season. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they had a permanent campsite. So the rest of that summer was sitting around the campfire. He was a retired vaudeville magician. His name was James T. Warmkessel. He was one of the first magicians on television. He was the children's magician on one of the early children's show called the Sally Star Show out of Philadelphia. This was one of the earliest kid shows that was on in TV, late 40s, early 50s. He was the magician that was on that show, had performed at this campground in the 40s. So that's how he knew about it and wanted to completely retire. He was retired. He had another job, a career that he was finishing out on. But he was there. And every Saturday, the next Friday after meeting him, I'm waiting for him to pull in Friday night. I got my little case there, and I'm sitting there, and he pulls in, and I'm ready to go, And so he knew I was really interested. Would bring tricks from home. Then every weekend would teach me things. Would sit around the fire and teach it to me, or show me a trick and then teach it to me. Something, show me how to make. Got a mail order magic catalog at the time, because I was in a rural area. Put little dots by the things in the catalog that he thought a 7 or 8-year-old would be able to do. And by the end of that summer, he had helped me put together a professional show that a kid could do. And that's how it started. So the next few summers. Now, here's the other ironic thing. The following summer, so I have all that. Following summer, the people that have the campground next to him, and it was a 4-camp block, 4 people together, they had a gentleman that would come up and visit with them every Sunday. And he was the president of the local, in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He was the president of the IBM, the International Brotherhood of Magicians local ring.
Ooh.
So what is the irony? You look at the irony from a rural. You go to my grocery store there, and there'd be 3 Amish buggies, parked outside. So I'm talking rural. So you go from that to no exposure other than me seeing the Houdini movie, mesmerized by the magicians I would see on Hollywood Palace and the Ed Sullivan Show, and that. But then this guy just helped me. And it came so natural, and it just, from that point on, to the point by the time I got in junior high, I was producing a major production once a year as a fundraiser for my high school, where I was bringing in national and international magic acts for a one-nighter as a fundraiser, from Del Rey, names that only magicians will know, but with the Del Rey, the Gustafsons, Tommy Wander, Mark D'Souza, Lee Allen, names that back in the day, they're no longer with us, but where you'd see them on Sonny and Cher one night, or Mike Douglas the next, like Garay and Tomeo. Did all that as a kid. So I was into it from an early start.
Man, for me, it was Mark Wilson.
Oh, the Magic Circus specials. Pillsbury
Yes.
Magic Syrup. That was I
Yes.
can't let that out. And thank you for bringing Mark up, okay? Because in lieu of all that, what started with the Magic Kit and the Sneaky Pete Magic Kit was Saturday mornings with the Magic Land of Alakazam.
Alakazam.
I had the
Yes,
coloring
sir.
book.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yes, Mark was a very important part of my life, and
Was he?
I want to say that in 2005 or six, I went to Hocus Pocus. They had a here in Fresno, in California,
Yeah.
and Mark did a lecture, and it was, I believe, probably one of the last ones that he did. He had a younger magician actually demonstrating a lot of the tricks because he couldn't manipulate a lot of things at that point, but he was there in spirit. And it was so nice to meet him and Nani, and such a beautiful, beautiful couple. I just love them.
Uh, I'm on social feed with Nanny, and I crisscrossed over the years, never got a chance to meet them. I have a student of mine that got into that took lessons from me. We did Zoom lessons and everything, and her first magic lessons as a course was Mark's course at the castle. So
Okay.
so through 6 degrees of separation, I have a wonderful picture of her with Mark and Nani. But I have to say, and I've rubbed elbows and crossed paths and become friends with many of the people that I still pinch myself over. But I missed out on Mark. I'm sorry to say. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's those pinch yourself moments like 2005 and 2006 when I went to Vegas and attended McBride's mystery school.
Uh-huh.
And I was so delighted to have the experience to meet Eugene Berger, who is no longer with us.
Yep. I never got to meet Eugene. I never
met
see. I'm not a
Johnny
West Coast guy.
Thomas. And I met
Who?
Johnny
Which one?
Thomas there. Awesome to see him do his egg bag trick right in Jeff's living room.
Yep.
And I can't let Jeff go, because Jeff honestly is probably the most wizardly person I honestly ever met in my
Wizard
life.
would describe Jeff. I would say, and Jeff's another one we've never met. Cross paths over. We'd occasionally cross paths on ships. He was a one of the accounts. My main account. He's one of the entertainment directors. He's a favorite when he's able to get them to bring him out occasionally. So we have crisscross over the time, and usually when that happens, we're out. Whoever's leaving, you're leaving early enough. You're not spending time with whoever that comes in. Once in a blue moon, it happens that we get to overlap and have lunch together or something before our plane schedules take us into different directions. So over the years, I've had a chance to overlap with some and have spent some great time with some of the other ones that are in the Johnny and Pam Thompson, and as an example, they're ones that we got to sit down and to be able to spend some time with. But we would crisscross constantly. Harry and Gay many years ago, we crisscrossed on the Rotterdam together, and had lunch with Harry. Gay went to unpack. And no one understands that more than my wife. But yeah, the crisscross like that, and over the years, the times that I've been on, ironically enough, in one form or another, most of the magicians that the names that I've gotten to become friends with or spend times with, I met ironically through the cruises, one way or the other. Either they were cruising for a vacation and happened to be on when I was on. They were on as part of a small subgroup, little group that that was part of that, and they were on with the ship that way. I'm in a resort on a regular basis, and one of them is working a regular gig, and we'll tie up that way every Wednesday or every Wednesday night. For the first 9 months of my cruise career, I spent every Wednesday night and Saturday night sitting with Richie Artie in his dressing room at Resorts International in between his two shows, just playing with the poodle and talking about things. And sometimes we discuss magic. Sometimes we'd be discussing about what he didn't like about the show. Sometimes we were talking about the lion that never stayed awake when he'd produce it. It was you never knew. But that was like one of the first. And then over the years, numerous times, spent a lot of time with Marvin Roy over the years, and ironically, in one form or another, Carol Fox had the irony and the joy of getting a call, and the voice wants to know if we're going to have drinks after the show that night, and it's Channing Pollock. And my wife and I then spend the next 2 weeks hosting Channing all through French Polynesia, and literally having more breakfast, lunch, and dinner and late night drinks with Channing every day for 2 weeks, and showing him the sights, and so examples like that, and it goes on and on and on. But it's all been very blessed through, ironically, through the. I get a call one day from the cruise director, and he says, "Craig, there's a guest leaving tomorrow mid cruise, and he's a fan of magic, and couldn't get to your show last night. With any chance that you could do a little close up or go up and do something up in his suite?" And I said to the crew, I said, I don't like doing that. That's not, they can't make the show. He said, well, he had a bit of a health issue, but he says, I think you're going to want to do it when you hear who it is. And I did it. It was Roger Moore. So,
Good God, Miss Moneypenny.
So there I go. I go up to the suite the next day, and he was getting off on Sitka. It was an Alaska cruise. He was getting off on Sitka the next day, and he was dealing with some cellulitis in his leg. So his leg was wrapped, and he had it up on a thing. But he was dressed to the frickin' nines down to the ascot. Even though he in the suite with his leg up. And I went in and did about 40 minutes of cards and coins and stuff, and we talked about it. And then he got a kick. I'm a Bond freak, okay. Always was from a kid on. All right. And the joy of my magic career and the international travels and the cruise work and everything, I've been able to go to just about all the locations that have been used in the Bond flicks. Okay. So that's just a weird little thing that I get a kick out of. So I brought that up, to him. I was talking about some of the locations that I've been blessed to know, and I always know, and he would laugh, and so he got a kick out of that. But magic fan, he did a little magic himself. He was pretty good. He had a couple. He did some card work. They knew he was very good friends with the English magician David Nixon, who a generation of us and before us will know that name very, very well. So we talked a little bit about his, palling around, and I think David Nixon did some work with him on the Saint TV show. I think there may have been some scenes where hands were used, and it was whatever. So, but yeah, I didn't turn that one down. So I went up and spent, and then not only just magicians, but other names that either I've opened for over the years, again via the cruise industry. That whole thing, that thing where A-list big name entertainers would use an opening act on their tours and in Vegas and everything kind of vanished. I came in at the tail end of that. So I came in so young, I caught the tail end of the Catskills and the Poconos and the Playboy clubs, caught all the end of that. And then that kind of all transitioned. Suddenly the cruise industry just, kind of exploded and filled up that circuit that suddenly stopped. And then for a little while, there was that slot of opening for names. I had a little bit of time with that, but then all those names and that eventually went to the cruise industry. And then I took my first cruise January of '84 was the beginning of my cruise. It was a 9-month contract, and I thought I'd come out of that and just go to the next production show in Atlantic City or Aruba or wherever I was doing the Americana hotel chain then. And another cruise thing popped up like that. and my manager was focusing on that at the time, and it just is boom, 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 and it's from 1984 till today. It's been just that's been the career. Very little, occasional land work, occasional performing arts center or dinner theater, occasional corporate work, occasional something privately, but the bulk of me is I'm home for a week, and then I'm gone for a week or two, home for a week, gone for three. In the old days, my wife is now retired, but when we worked together, we'd be gone for a year at a time. We'd do residencies. We'd be in Tahiti or Spain for a year at a time on a ship. So we've been very blessed. It's been great.
Your wife was an assistant?
My assistant, we met on a cruise ship. 1985, I was entertaining on Holland America Line's Nordam. And I always say I went walking through the casino and saw this beautiful little blonde blackjack dealer, and it was love at first sight because I knew she'd fit in all the boxes.
Let me measure you up here.
Isn't that terrible? That's the way. Isn't that sad that there's an actual matter of fact to all that? Yeah,
God bless you, my friend.
Yeah. So, and I thought, well, blackjack, you're good with cards. This will be great. And she was a performer behind the thing. She's from England, and so the little accent nailed me, and then just everything, so we started dating, and then that progressed, and we married in '87, and she worked in the act for over 20 years, doing the Big Illusion show, and then we just decided we'd hit the point. She could still do it, but we reached a point. She decided she wanted to age gracefully, and she said it was just time to stop jumping in and out of the boxes. And also, over 20 plus years of doing that, there were a few physical things that we did. One illusion that was really unforgiving to her. It really messed her neck up a little bit. So we got a dog, and she stayed home. And so I don't do long contracts now. I don't go away. That's where it is. It's a week or two at a time. My next one's coming up is a 3-weeker, and that's about as long as I go away, generally. So, yes. So she worked. That was the hardest thing. But I was able to transition. I started doing stand-up comedy more than 20 years ago. That came about because I was writing material for a lot of people, and even writing material for comics that were on board not doing well, and they either were going to get fired or they needed to do something else. And the director from the line would call me and say, "Hey, can you help the guy out?" And I'd write an act for the guy, and he'd do it, and it'd be great. And then finally, the entertainment director for the line would say, "Well, if you're doing this for everybody, why aren't we using you as a stand-up comedian as well?" So when I get the call, it's always specified if I'm going out as comedian, which means carry garment bag and I go, or whether I'm going out for the comedy magic. And and if I'm picking up a ship and getting off a ship in Florida, if I'm joining, I have the opportunity to drive in a couple big pieces then, so they don't have to ship. And we don't get into that, all of that nonsense. So I can take the spiker or the acupuncture, but they're still done as one-man illusions. I say one-man illusions. I have a full technical team on the ship working behind the scenes. So yeah, it might look like I'm doing one man, So I call the show a one-man show, but it kind of is anything but. It just happens to be me on stage. That's all. So there's a lot of I usually have 2 or 3 technical guys that are working in the wings or behind. And again, the ships, the joy of the ships, they provide all that for you. If you take a land date, and great if it's a theater, wonderful, bells and whistles. Of course, theater work today, you're paying for every damn microphone stand that you want in the theater or whatever when you go into. So that's the way theaters are today. But that is the joy of the ship work. You have your 1 or 2 production managers, you have 2 or 3 light guys, sound guys, you've got full support backstage for technical support, production. So, and it's all provided for you. You do a land gig, and if you need that, you got to hire it or bring it in with you. So So in that sense, the cruise work has really spoiled me too over the years. So it's been lucky,
That's
blessed.
something I really wish I could have gotten into. I was a magician member at the Magic Castle from 94 to 96.
Hmm.
Just a few years, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'd been there many times before, and met Billy McComb and fell in love
Ah.
with Billy, and
Ah.
um, so many other big names that I've just had the
Yes.
pleasure to just sit down with, and Milt Larson.
Yep.
Uh, but I've never, ever, ever had the cojones to get on that stage and do it myself. And I regret it. I really do. At this point, I really regret it because I'm not getting any younger. And I really wish I would have explored the cruise ships, because honestly, I'm really considering going on the road with my act again. And I
Yeah.
really I want to get some use out of these things before I
What
die, damn it.
the nice thing is on land, there are venues available now for Magic. For the longest time, we've had a good decade or more where so many of the new people that were coming into the business more or less were coming off the street. As far as they went into street performing to break in and to hone their chops, and in many ways there's nothing like street performing to do just that. Yeah, where you're
Oh
out
yeah,
there
that's crazy.
every day, all day, doing whatever, up against just about any situation you can throw out. So that training is incredible. But there is a bit of a difference. This is where I lucked out because I started so young. I caught that, like I said, I caught that Playboy Club Pocono Catskill thing, where it was a different. You could break stuff in, sort of. You could hone your art form, but it was still on a very You were working. You were in a professional. You were still kind of top tier. I'd be opening for Lorna Luft, who is Liza Minnelli's sister. That like wasn't Liza, but it was her sister. So but you still had to be. You had to have it. To get
Oh
that
yeah.
booking. All right, and of course then to keep coming back to be brought in, and then a few of those people liked you, so they'd always request that, hey, when I'm here, hire Craig Diamond for I'd like him to be my opener or whatever. I'll tell you who was really good to me was Soupy Sales, the comedian Soupy
Oh,
Sales.
Soupy Sales. Wow. That's
I
awesome.
I started doing a telethon that Soupy hosted, a March of Dimes telethon in 1973. No, Soupy didn't. I did the one in 73, but Soupy wasn't the host. 74, 75, 76, and 77. Soupy was the host of the March. So it was the March of Dimes version of the Jerry Lewis telethon. Okay.
Okay.
And Soupy was the face for it. I did my first appearance on that. It was like 3 a.m, one of those deals. And it was just before Soupy was ready to take his break, because he'd take about that hour of the night. It was the only time he'd leave camera for 2 hours, and the guest host would fill in and everything. But luckily, I was on right before Soupy took his nap, and Soupy saw me. So I'm a kid doing magic, okay? But I'm doing big I'm doing the Pelican illusion, okay, on stage. And well, Soupy loved it. Loved it. He was a kid show performer, Soupy. So the idea that this kid's doing this big illusion and everything, he loved that. So requested that the next year, if I'm on, make sure that I get a prime time slot.
Nice.
So next year, I'm on again. I get the 10 o'clock slot Saturday night. Next year, I'm given the choice. The two best slots are in the first hour they start, or at 11, which is when everybody finishes watching what they were watching at 10 o'clock. And instead of going to the local news, they go to the telethon. All right. So
Right.
he gave me that option. So and this is all from Soupy. So then he got me tipped into management, got my first Playboy Club booking. I rode in my first limo because it's through Soupy Sales, you know. So so it was Soupy that had as much, kind of pump. So the Poconos, the Catskills, it was all through the agency that Soupy, hooked me up through. So I had that element of training and honing my art form as things progressed. And today, for the performers coming out of it, that doesn't exist anymore. So there was kind of for magicians in particular, I think there was a really dry period of you had to come off the street, and that developed you only to a certain point. It didn't develop, I want to say, the finesse, and that is taking no disregard to any street performer. And when I say the finesse, you only get that when you're working in a different environment. Okay, you can't get the finesse on the street of the bells and whistles that you're able to incorporate and work and add. So I was really blessed with that. But now you talking about going out and doing it on the road. Of course, comedy clubs hire magicians. Okay, now comedy clubs they were all closing all over the place for a while. Huge boom, and then they were shutting down. So that was very hit and miss. But my gosh, I think there's a dozen, and I haven't done any of them, but they're all out there now. There's a dozen dedicated magic venues or more all across the country. And it seems to be more and more opening up, and all bringing in guest magicians for a week or two at a time. There's several in California. Of course, it was only the Castle forever, but there's ones in of course, Chicago Magic Lounge. You've got there's two in Pennsylvania. There's a couple of they're starting all over the place. So it's there for you, John. It's if you want to give it a shot, because it's out there. Yeah. Yeah.
I had Stephen Hart on the show last week, and of course he's from Florida as well. And of course Steve Spill a few years ago. I told him I was quitting, and he was like, or giving it up, and he was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, I'm getting up there in age," and he was like, "You're just getting started. Shut up."
Yeah. And, I love Steve.
I love Steve too, and I definitely want to get him on the show. And
I have sitting in my office, I have a Brook Farm in a Magic poster up on the wall in my office. So that's again, I'm not a West Coast guy, so I never got to rub elbows with Steve in the Castle or in California.
Well, he's in Hawaii now, but
I know he is. Yep, there he is.
Comes the word, baby. Yes.
But I would pop into Brook Farm on a regular basis. So and then I got involved. I was brought in to Tico Bonomo of the Bonomo Turkish Taffy family fame. And back in the early 80s, when the gaming thing, you didn't have gaming at home, you had to go to your mall to Time Out Amusement Arcade. All right. And
yep.
He was the guy that owned the Time Out Amusement Arcade that was in every mall across the country. Okay. So they went from the Bonomo Turkish Taffy fame, which was kind of a generation before us, but big, into the Time Out Amusement thing. And he was a magic fan. Okay, and he was in early TV. He was in very early TV production. Was old friends with James Randi from early TV days, when I think Randy was a clown at some point on a TV show. So at any rate, they want to open up a dinner theater chain called the Great Fudini, where they'd have a fast food section, a higher end fast food section, a la McDonald's, Hardee's, Arby's, that type, but a little more all with magic theme. All right, so magic posters on the wall. The sandwiches were called magic-y things. That went into a Time Out Amusement Arcade attached to the kiddie section. In the Time Out Amusement Arcade, they had a very small stage for children's shows for a birthday party type magicians. Okay, this was at a big complex. That then went into the adult bar, which catered to the businessman cocktail hour after hot hors d'oeuvres and everything. And they had a couple great close-up guys. Alan New was one of the close-up guys working there. He was a teenager working in the room. Then that went into a 110-seat, 3-tiered little theater stage, and the stage act, you'd do 3 20-minute shows a night. The idea is they would turn the dining aspect over. They would turn over 3 times a night. So you hit them with a 25-minute show, get them out. The next group comes in, and basically 3 a night. They opened up 2 of them. And then it all went. I did my first ship gig after the second one, 9 months. And I purposely chose to drive home from Miami and drive back to Pennsylvania, and figured I'd spend a night or 2 in the DC area and go into Fudini's and everything. And I rolled up to the driveway and the parking lot, and gone. They were gone. So it never lasted. It never took off. But the one location in Rockville, Maryland, was just a short distance from Brook Farm and a Magic. So I would always try to pop over after, because we closed early and Brook Farm always rocked. So I would try to pop over and visit for a while, and I honestly I never got to see Metropolis, and I'm really sorry I never got to see Steve's Metropolis. But that Brook Farm
Magicopolis was one of those other venues that I really wanted to do too, and it was so heartbreaking when I started texting him on Facebook, and I said, "All right, I think I'm ready to do it." He goes, "Well, I'm sorry, John. I already sold the place."
Yeah.
It's still in the Magic community. It's now the Magic Lounge or whatever it is, and it's owned by somebody from the Magic Castle.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh wow!" So there goes that opportunity. See, if you zig and zag too long, like I have, opportunities pass you by, and it's not a fun thing to look back and go, "Man."
No, you got to do it. Now, the cruise industry is hard to get into, in a sense. If you have a good video, just about anybody can get hired one time. All right, because the video looks good. They go, "Oh, this is whatever." But you get into the actual gig itself. All right, and what we tend to show in our 6-minute video, and even that's long. The cruise people don't even want to watch 6 minutes of video. Okay, that's even long. All right. So if you don't already have existing credits to begin with, and whatever, you still can get hired, because they always love to find new faces and everything. New is always good, and it's throwing strands of spaghetti at a wall for people that don't have a background. They'll give you a shot and hope the spaghetti strand sticks. That's if you don't already have the background, or that you're not coming from the background. So anybody can get it. Now, if you're able to deliver, you get on and you can deliver, so that report that you get, which that's the first thing you get on. You're hired by the land operation. You're hired by the main office. They've got an entertainment manager that's watching your videos. That's doing cruise director has nothing to do with any of that. All right. So you're hired by corporate, basically, and you're generally hired by corporate via an agent that has chosen to say, "Okay, I'll represent you," and submit you to the cruise line. Cruise line looks at all the different ones. Okay, we'll pick. All right, let's try. We haven't used. Oh, that's a new name. We haven't tried. All right, let's try this name. So then you get out, and if a cruise gig, if you have no idea what you're going into, is like being thrown to the wolves. If you have no one to talk to give you the rundown of what to expect, whatever, because it's very overwhelming. It's very professional. It's as professional as it gets. And but it can be overwhelming. We go from loading our cars up and going to our gigs and doing our shows or whatever, and okay, then maybe we did that nice theater gig here and there or whatever, that great whatever, but you get in this environment, and this is Vegas at sea. I mean, that the only difference between Vegas and a cruise ship is your stage is moving. That's the only
Right.
difference. Okay, that is it. So you get through the protocol of who you're talking to, who you're communicating with. There's usually a letter waiting for you, welcome you on board. Here are your phone numbers. Here's your show dates. Here's what you do, and there you are. It's like you know, and then you do your show. And the irony with the cruise industry, and this bothers the daylights out of me when I see, like on America AGT, where Simon Cowell will say something, you're not even good enough for a ship or whatever, this or that. I don't know how many times I've heard him disparage cruise ship entertainers, which drives me insane. Cause maybe he happened to cruise for a week and see a stinker. I don't know. That happens. All right. But the cruise industry operates on such a high standard. At the end of the week, all those passengers, those thousands of people, have a comment card, which is it's your report card. Okay, and that's every week. So there are some lines that you are listed as in the entertainment department. You are listed individually to be rated. Sometimes it's just a group professional entertainment. How do you rate the professional entertainment? And if you don't rate it, give it the highest rating, they want to know specifically why you didn't give it that rating. So they want to know what you didn't care for. And that's when you get your write-ins then. And there's nothing like a good write-in to stab you in the heart, or a bad write-in.
We want you to cut your main act because
they
didn't like it.
You can get 100 great comments, but it's that one that rips you apart. That's one that gets in. That's the worm ear that gets into your head. But that being said, now I'll give you an example. On Holland America Line, if you're rated individually, they rate you on a 1 to 9. They don't do 10. Okay, they go 1 to 9. But you have got to maintain an 8.34 rating to maintain your contract. Yeah. Now, name another business that percentage. You look at what that turns into on a percentage level. Name another business that's the way it is. There isn't any. So that's when the cruise lines, when they get disparaged for entertainment, I don't like it. Now, an act might get hired, and they got 2 weeks or whatever, and they're new and they're trying out, and they don't have the chops. And you might be on that week, and one of those acts might be a weak act because it happens to be that. But
and gone the next.
But they'll be gone the next. That's exactly right. They'll be gone. And even if you're great, I've worked for companies for years and years and years. You reach your expiration date at time. You can become part of the furniture. So there's nothing more wonderful going on. Craig, we love you. Love the standing ovations that you get. Everyone loves you, but
you don't have to think about it, dude.
But we're going to use a fresh face for a little while or whatever. Now that you come back again, they go the other route for a little bit, and then the phone rings a little bit, and that's when I always ask for a little more money.
There it is. Well, let's negotiate a little bit here.
Yeah.
So I've had the pleasure of seeing your YouTube channel. I visited like last night and the night before. So prestigious and so awesome to see you working. And this guy is so polished. And then I saw your stand-up comedy, and I was like, what on earth?
Thank you.
You're funny.
Thank
You are funny. You remind me a lot of my friend Robert Bax, and I mean he does a lot of the same stuff. Not the same stuff, but he's a comedian magician, and works out of a little bag. But most of his stuff is humor, and he could stretch the material as I give credit for that.
I had a magician friend of mine that followed me on a ship, and they had my run list was still posted backstage for the show. Okay, there's it's a 55-minute show, and I have 4 things on my run list. For the show, and maybe five things. All right, and my buddy called me afterwards. Afterwards. I said to the stage manager, he said, "Where's the other page?" And he said, "No, that's Craig's show. It's Craig's show." Yeah.
5 tricks, and believe me, he's stretching it, baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, here's the other thing. See, I have been blessed. Almost my entire showbiz career, I almost am never working with another magician. Okay, because again, it's not the magic conventions, it's not the castle, it's not the whatever. I'm working with a singer and
It's
a comedian.
variety.
Yep. Occasionally there'll be another variety act. There'll be a juggler or ventriloquist thrown in there, possibly. In the old days, in the early days of cruising, you had a lot of the variety acts on. Okay, you'd only have about 2 nights of the production shows, the in-house cast that does the Broadway style production shows. Used to only be 2 nights of those, and then the rest, every other night, was filled with variety acts of one form or another. And when I first started, those variety night shows were 2 bills. All right. Yeah. I mean, a split bill. You'd have an opening act and a closing act. So, you got your singer opening for the comedian. You got your dance team opening for the magician. You got your whatever. And then that changed over the years to where the act did just their solo act, their one main act. All right. So the star, your headline, that's when the term your headline act came in. All right. So now you're doing your full night on your own. You're doing your 45, 50, 55 minute on your own. And then that went to that form. And then the deal, normally you would do that. And then they'd have a variety show on the last night featuring, you would do a 10 or 15 minute spot, and the other acts that were on throughout the week on the other night, same thing. They would do a 10, 15 minute spot. And so if you had 4 variety acts or 4 acts on, you had a comedian, a singer, a magician, and a juggler. All 4 of us then would do a 10 or 12 minute spot for a farewell variety night.
Okay.
We all had our own main night before. All right. So it went that way. But the days when you were doing split bills, there were a lot of acts on the ship. It was great. The hallway, your hallway, and generally we all have rooms next to each other. So that was just wonderful. The best thing about this, I love my stage time. I mean, that's what I'm there to do. So that's my effort of love. So no matter what I'm doing, I love my stage time. But the other thing that you can't put a price on this, and unless you experience it, it's the equivalent for any magicians is when you go to the magic convention, and yet for those couple days you're able to sit around the lunch and have lunch with 5, 6, 8 other guys, and you're all talking shop, and you're all listening to the stories, and you're all doing that. Well, on the ship, you go to lunch, and it's the same thing, but it's not other magicians. Okay, it's the singer, the comedian, the whatever. So you're hearing all their war stories. And wonderful stories too, not just war stories, but showbiz stories. And these are all these are names within their own art form themselves. So you go for lunch, you let's meet for lunch at noon, and you're still sitting at the table at 4 in the afternoon, and it's just gone all day. You're almost going into the evening dinner time, and it's just one wonderful story after another, but not with magicians. I always hung with the comics. So I learned from the comedians. I learned timing. I had a multi-decade college to learn from the best of the best of the best, whether it was microphone technique, waiting for the laugh to subside before you go to the next, milking this with an eye look, or just whatever. So from Don Rickles down, I learned from everybody. So that is really great too. It's been a college of comedy and humor. So it's been great.
And this morning I went to bed watching your multiplying bottles trick. Oh, that was good. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Denny Haney in there. I saw a little bit of Denny Haney there.
Well, Denny talked me into doing it. All right.
Nice.
So when I went, Denny was my guy. All right. When Denny had the shop, and Denny and I used to cross paths in the Catskills and the Poconos. Okay. I was a little younger than Denny, so I was the young kid. So I was usually getting the dates they were turning down.
Oh my God. Right. That's hysterical.
Yeah. Craig Diamond and Crystal were the poor man's Denny and Lee at the time. All right. So we crisscrossed all the way, and I have to say, Denny, when I was maybe 12 or 13, they voted me in early to the local IBM because I was already doing professional shows and everything. You're supposed to be 14 to join the clubs and everything, but they allowed me to join at 12. So I think it was my first IBM annual banquet show. Denny and Lee were the headline closing act. So this was probably 1970 or something like that, about 1970. And I think he was doing Vietnam at the time, and he was either had been listening, was touring, or was U.S. I forget what that was. But he was my first live. I saw this type of thing on television, but I never saw it in person. The slick manipulation act. That slick. He had blue satin tails, custom tails made, like a light blue, right down to the matching top hat, and just slick card manipulation and birds. And I think he did a sword suspension then with Lee, and then the canvas cover box closing. And I thought it was about the slickest act I'd ever, as a full act. I thought it was about the slickest act at that point, the slickest act I'd ever seen. So the joy, as I matured and grew, and the act grew and everything, then within about 10 years or thereabouts, then we're crossing paths on the circuit. I used to cross paths with Denny and Lee, and another act who sadly is gone was Bob and Sandy. And then Craig Diamond and Crystal. I was the young kid. And then when Denny opened the shop, he knew I would like different things. So I would call Denny about 4 times a year and say, okay, what's looking good? Craig, you got to have this. This is what you need this. You got to have, I only have one, or I don't have it, but I can get it. Or, I thought of you right away. And when Dolores retired from the show and it was time to start putting more comedy magic stuff in, first thing Denny says to me on the phone, he says, you got to put the bottles in the show. You got to put the bottles in the show. And I really him-hawed about it, because I'll be honest with you, I never liked the bottles. I never liked the bottle trick. I just never liked it. And he's, no, you got to do it. Trust me, Craig. You got to do it.
It was awesome. I loved your.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Now, I do a little different. My end is a little different. All right. I don't do the traditional Ken Brook end and what Denny did at end with it. And but I got to tell you, that piece went from early in the act to middling to the act to more times than not now. I close with that piece, and
that's a good door closer right there.
You never would have told me that years ago. But so yeah, Denny. I have to say, I think if I break down the comedy magic act right now, 2/3 of it came and are all from recommendations from Denny, probably. So yeah. My only regret, again, all these years of traveling the ships, I would do 30 to 40 weeks a year on the cruises. My downtime, when we had our downtime, we didn't travel then. We stayed home with the family. It was family time for our time. So I wasn't looking to go to, the SAM convention or to kill my time with Abbott's if I had the week off, or I got to get up and see that it. Now I look back now and great family time, but I look, I'm sorry, I was only in Denny's shop probably 3 times over the course of that. Now we talked on the phone, like I say, probably about every other month, but yeah. So yeah, we all do this with the ball. I did the MAS convention the year that Denny passed away. I did the Saturday night show. I emceed and hosted the show and did the bottles, and I said, no, it's not being done like Denny, but here's a tribute. It's got to be out there.
So nice, man. I can't believe an hour has already gone by, my friend.
Has it, John?
Crazy?
Oh my gosh!
So I have to wrap it up, my friend, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to definitely have you back on. Before we head out, I just want to ask you if you have any advice for any young magicians flirting with the idea of getting into it.
Hang in there. Number one, don't get discouraged. The formats that we have today that are available today via YouTube, TikTok, all that are incredible for magicians. It's an entire format. Couldn't possibly have believed that as a. Can you imagine, John, you and me as a kid being able to hook up a camera while we were wanting to do a trick and film and go? I mean, come on.
Impossible.
So having that available to anybody getting into magic, and of course, try to learn from whoever you can learn from. All right. And there's nothing that beats, and yes, everything this way through the Zoom and everything, that's wonderful. But there's also that nothing beats that hand-on personal connection. So I always say the local magic clubs are all hurting. They're all combined. The SAM and IBM clubs are all combining because they can't get membership for two different clubs to exist in one city or whatever. So get out there in person, join the local magic community. And it still exists out there. So do a little research where they are. If you're just getting interested in magic and don't have that input to know about that, get involved with the IBM and the SAM or whatever local group that's available, so that you have that camaraderie with other people and other magicians. You can say, hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on that. That ends up connecting to a dozen of these same guys, then doing Zoom meetings once a week to do the same thing, and then get out there. All right. I only gave lessons to a few people, and they all went on to become working professional magicians. And at the time, I had on the farm, I had an apartment below my parents' home, and my one student would come, and he was a great technician, but he was introverted as possible. Okay, and you got to get that out. And after I would teach him something, and he'd have everything just the way it was, I said, "Now that's great." I said, now I want you to go upstairs and I want you to perform that for my mother and father. Okay.
Oh no.
All right. So now I watched the kid go from where he's looking at his own hands, watching what he's doing, where you don't have to know, but you got to get that out there, to going up, and that first boom, there you are. You're actually performing for somebody, and it takes on a whole thing. It's just not you in the mirror or you in the camera. So get out there, connect with other guys, learn. I'll say what Denny used to say: tarbell, tarbell, tarbell. Okay, that's the other thing.
Yep.
All right. So magic wise, the basics. Get involved in a local group. Try to keep the ego down a little bit as you're moving along, because that tends to be the first thing that tends to get in a young magician's way. That's not too long into it before they think they know everything and whatever. And then that can be a bit of a stumbling block for them. Open mind and learn. That would be the best thing. And
there you have it. That's some great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for my man, Craig Diamond.
I want a hell of a tan.
And your tan, yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the time we have for today. I really hope you enjoyed Magician Craig Diamond. I thoroughly recommend that you go to his website, his Facebook page, and show him some love. He's got a channel on YouTube. All the links will be displayed down below. But what a fun podcast it was today.
Yes.
Even after the cameras stopped rolling, we carried on a wonderful conversation for probably another hour, which we discovered would probably make another great episode. So Craig Diamond will be rejoining us. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'm John Marshall. Till the very next time that we meet, God bless you.
What are you laughing at?